So let's put ourselves in the right direction again, state our purpose. Remind us of our reliance upon the Buddha and his teachings in the first part, and then thinking we're going to listen to these teachings, see if there's some meaning here, make sense of it, apply it to our life to help us one more step in the development of our amazing potential for the sake of sending beings. Refuge prayer. Refuge and bodhicitta. Sangye charam soke chonam la jancho barudagni kyam suchi jagi chonyen ki personam ki joda penche sangye dropasho sangye charam soke chonam la jancho barudagni kyam suchi jagi chonyen ki personam ki joda penche sangye dropasho Sangye chadam, sangye chonam la, jancho barudagni kyam suchi, jagi chonyen ki personam ki, jola menche sangye dropasho. Well, what's Guru devotion? What does this mean? The word guru, the word devotion. I've heard the word guru, which is Sanskrit, is translated as heavy with qualities, which sounds very nice. And if you think about it, anything we learn, we need a person who knows how to do it, isn't it? And that would be a person heavy with those qualities. It's a nice phrase. And if we think about it, it's the most common sense way to learn something. You know, I mean, if we read the traditional way we read the teachings of the Lamrim and the way the Tibetans talk and the way it's coming from the Indians, it seems so kind of in the sky for us, I think. And so I think I can't stress enough again how important it is to bring it right down to earth and look at the logic of it. The logic of it. You read it in the devotional way in the teachings, and it's hard to get your head around it sometimes. And then we sort of, yeah. So let's just really try to bring it down to earth. Well, it seems, like I said, first of all, it's so obvious, so logical, so reasonable that the best way, the quickest way to learn something is ask somebody who knows how to do it. I mean, it's hardly rocket science, is it? You know? Actually, I remember myself when I was going through my own process and before I got to meet the Lamas and became a Buddhist. And it was at some point when I was very kind of radical lefty and very, politics and all that. And sort of going through this process of trying to work out who I was, I suppose. This is what we're trying to do, all of us, isn't it? Taking our own steps. And there was at some point it was very strong in my mind that I needed to do it, which I think is a really good step. We need to do it. Often when we're first in religion, sometimes we can be a bit kind of victim and think it's all someone else has to do it, which is very much part of the way we feel, I think, as victims. Somehow, someone makes me happy, someone does this, someone does that for me. And so at some point, which seems quite healthy, there was this very strong sense that I had to do it myself. But then I remember vividly thinking, and that probably went too, and I did indeed go too far to that extreme. I then had this idea, I remember hearing some of my friends who'd stopped being political and started becoming spiritual, and they'd got a guru. And I remember thinking, what a disgusting idea, I couldn't have thought of anything more revolting. And there was a very strong sense that this cliched idea of having a guru means you're giving up yourself. You're surrendering to someone else. You're doing whatever they say. And that was a horrific idea to me. So I can see in my own progress it was very healthy, That it was me who had to do it. I had to do it. But what I was doing was chucking the baby out with the bathwater, or exaggerating it and thinking I had to do it and without depending on anybody else. And that's clearly not logical. Because we're interdependent beings, we can't possibly not depend on someone else. So the wrong way to understand the business of God or the teacher, a guru, is that I'm just this little nothing and I do whatever they say. And you read all these horror stories. I remember reading that story about Jim Jones. That guy and almost 900 people who all died in where it was, in South America somewhere. And it was like an absolute, the people's nightmare of a cult, giving yourself, having a guru dominate you and tell you what to do, and you become this nothing person. This is the commonest, one exaggerated idea, you know, extreme, completely bizarre, ridiculous view, and it fits and it's very much, that is the victim mode, isn't it? When you're in a relationship and someone dominates you, you're this complete victim, and they're the total boss. You understand what I'm saying? And that's really, we can see, it's completely unhealthy, completely wrong. And then, of course, if you're a victim, you like to blame somebody. And it gives rise to all that. When you turn against that cult, you completely turn against that person, turn against that bully husband, and now they become the worst enemy. So it's a really unbalanced, unhealthy way to see things. So I remember in my own mind thinking that that was revolting, and that's very sensible, it is revolting. But I went too far and thought I didn't need anybody. I have to do it, I have to do it. Do you see what I'm saying? So I learned, very interestingly, I learned, when I was doing Kung Fu, this is before I was a Buddhist, and I didn't, you know, I remember choosing this particular, actually it was karate at the time. And at that time I was a feminist. Okay, that was my politics. And so I consciously chose a female teacher in this, when I lived in New York, this is whenever it was, a long time ago. And I remember very well, I studied like that for like a year or something. And I remember, then what happened was, and I was doing my karate, and I was practicing every day and training. And then I remember, then I went, another year or something passed, and I went back to Australia. And I went to this other school. I wanted us to do karate again. By this point, I had decided that I couldn't reject men. You know, I've been very radical in my politics. I hadn't anything to do with men, you know. So I decided I couldn't reject half the human race any longer. It was somehow, I was very serious in my politics. I was very serious. When I was a hippie, it was all the straight people, you know, I hated. And then I was into, I always quote this, and then I was a old radical lefty, it was all the rich people. And then I was into sort of supporting all the Black Panthers and all that business, and I hate all the white people. They were all the blame for all the suffering in the world, you know. And then it was male people when I was a feminist. And I kind of exhausted all options, you know. And by this point I really figured it was sort of, I couldn't keep, you know, rejecting the entire human race. There was no one left but me, somehow. So I remember making this very conscious decision, which is a big step from my mind. When I went back to Australia, I wanted to do karate still, so I went to the same kind of style karate in Melbourne, but the only one I could find had this man teacher. So I figured, okay, it's a big move for me, I'll choose him. So I did. But what was interesting was, when I got there, and I said I was at whatever colour belt I was like the third level belt. I thought I was a smarty pants, you know, because I was kind of quite fanatic and did it every day when I was training. And then I really felt I'd improved to that level, whatever. And then after one class, I came back the next time and he put me back to the white belts. And I remember being really mortified. I mean, I was outraged, you know. But then I thought about it. And that's when I realised the importance of a teacher. I somehow got it. Something became clear to me that what I'd done was I'd chosen the wrong teacher before. Because I'd chosen for the wrong reason. I didn't check her qualifications. I didn't check her karate, and so I learned wrongly for 1 year. So, and I really learned that. That was when the first time, I remember it vividly, the first time I realised the importance of a teacher. Until then it was very clear. You know, I remember when I was very political, one of my friends became some Hindu or something, and she had a guru, and I remember we talked about it. We were just horrified at this terrible thought of having a guru, like this idea of, you know, giving yourself to somebody. And then I learned this one about the teacher. It was the first time it really struck me, the necessity for a teacher. Because it's not because I didn't, you know, not because I didn't have to do it. Of course I had to do it, but how was I going to learn if I didn't have this person who was qualified? Because you can't get it out of the sky. So that was the first time, and it really helped my mind a lot. Okay, it was hard for me to swallow my pride and go back to the white belts, but I did. I didn't leave, you know. It was a very good move on my part. So anyway, it was about a year later when I met Lama Yeshe Lama Zopa. And I certainly wasn't looking for a guru, that's a fact, you know. I was not looking for a guru. So maybe I'll tell you about how I met them and everything, just to sort of illustrate this idea of a teacher, you know. I still wasn't really looking for a guru. It was still me having to do it, you know, very self-centered, very proud. And I remember but I wanted a spiritual path very strongly, you know. And I broke my foot. That's what I'd been doing karate for a couple of years by this point, and I felt I'd found my path, you know. And then someday I was helping this woman. A woman's car stopped in the middle of an intersection. I hopped out and helped to push the car, and somehow somehow, I never worked out how, my left foot, this car ran over my left foot, just my left foot. I don't quite know how, but my left foot got run over and I heard it go, and I fell to the earth, and I thought, I can't do karate. I was hysterical, you know. And this poor man who drove over my foot came up looking all kind of mortified, and I remember I screamed at him, "You ran over my foot!" You know? And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." He said, he was very sorry. But I remember it was like, he stopped me in my tracks, you know. So then he drove me to the local hospital, which is where I had to be born, the Mercy Hospital. I remember that. And I was just devastated because I couldn't do karate. I was completely into it, you know. And his name was Bill Bright. Well, I'm eternally grateful to Bill Bright because of breaking my foot and I was in plaster, I couldn't do my karate anymore. So then I saw a poster of this course by this person called Lama Yeshe. I kept thinking, who's he? I know him. Where have I heard of him before? I'd never met him before. I didn't know who he was, nor what a Lama was, you know. I first never heard of Tibetan Buddhism. But because I couldn't do my karate, I went and did that course instead, which is how I met the Lamas, you know. And then a friend of mine said I should sue him. I never thought of suing anybody. So I sued the poor man, Mr. Bill Bright, and I got $4,000, and that got me to Copan a year later when I became a nun. So it was quite helpful. I'm most grateful to Bill Bright. I mean, $4,000, you know, not much. I felt very ashamed of it. Yeah, the lawyer I saw, he said, "That's right, your karate career's ruined, isn't it?" I said, "Yes." And basically, I got $4,000. That was back in 1974, 1976. So it's probably worth about 40 now. Yeah, well, it probably would be. So that's how I got to meet Lama Yeshe and I was open. I saw this poster. I was sitting in this restaurant in Melbourne, this vegetarian restaurant, still there, called Shakahari. I'm feeling very sorry for myself. And this poster kind of appeared, you know, there was Lama Yeshe. I thought, who's Lama Yeshe? So I was in Queensland at Internalizing Institute, which had started in 74, I think. 75 they began to build it, I think, 75. Nick Rebush, Nick and his ex-girlfriend, Yeshikado, who now is a nun, he was a monk at some point, they both, and two other people, offered their piece of land in Queensland, which was the first centre outside India and Nepal, I think, the first FMT centre, Internalizing Institute. So that was where I had my first course. So I remember I was very, very proud, still am very proud, arrogant, but really feeling I had to do it myself. Wasn't interested in a teacher, but sort of could see the importance of a decent teacher. Really looking for a spiritual path, but not quite know what, you know. After I stopped being a very radical feminist and looking for a path again, I went back to Mass and that didn't work, and I went to some Christian thing that didn't work, I did TM, it didn't work, and my Kung Fu, I liked that very much, the karate, and then Mr. Bill Bright ran over my foot and stopped my plans. But then I went to this course. The plaster was off by then. And I remember, as soon as I got there, I kind of liked the idea of the place. Felt kind of comfortable, but I was still very radical feminist, and the idea, and all these women were hippies, you know, and the hippies, it was very basic. You had to kind of lug buckets of water around. All the ladies couldn't carry the buckets of water, and all the men. It was horrific for me because I've been around all these radical lesbian separatist feminists, you know, where we, anyway, whatever. It was kind of shocking to be around all these hippies again. I couldn't believe, I was just in a state of shock most of the time, fighting everybody. Anyway, at the same time, I liked being there. There was this course, a Labyrinth course with Lamas over teaching, 200 people, packed, you know. But I remember for 1 month, I happily sat there, but I did not understand a word Lamas over said. I understood his English fine, but all I know was I could not get my head around this bizarre, arcane structure, you know, these strange concepts. I couldn't get a handle on any of it. I had no idea what he was talking about. I kept thinking to myself, where's the Buddhism? I mean, I had no idea what Buddhism was. I'd read a couple of Zen books, it was about it, you know. But I knew I was happy to be there. I went to every class, completely confused, but still went, arguing with everybody about, you know, all these things. And then every now and again, Lama Yeshe would come and he'd give a talk at night. Well, I liked him. He talked to me, you know. Somehow, Lama had this way, he was famous for, you know, outrageous English, completely anarchic, hopeless structure. You didn't learn any grammar. It was just like this weird, sometimes you read his transcripts. Even now when I edit his books, just these words strung together. You've got to kind of intuit the meaning, you know. But somehow he had a way of communicating. He had a way of talking. I mean, have you been to traditional Tibetan teachings? From Tibetan Lama. It's a different way of talking. Wouldn't you agree, those of you know? And you've got to really sort of process it and unpack it to get it to talk in a Western way, you know? Because it's medieval. It is medieval. They've kept this very nice medieval structure, which is a good sign because it's not become too degenerate. But the bad sign is you've got to unpack all these words. You don't know what they're talking about sometimes. And we put the wrong meanings onto it. Well, look, this is how it was for me. This Rumshe's own English, and his English was pretty anarchic as well. But Lamieshi had a way of talking that was very modern. Somehow it sounded like he knew how we thought. He used all these right words. The verbs weren't right, and the pronouns and everything were all wrong, but the descriptive words they kind of grabbed you. That was my experience. And he was famous for that. I remember a man called Gene Smith, who started this thing called, he was in Boston for a while, working for Wisdom. But for years and years, he passed away recently, he was in India, and he worked for the Library of Congress. Since the 60s, he spoke Tibetan. And it was interesting. It really shows the good virtues, the meritorious karma of this country. The Library of Congress hired him for like 40 years, paid him a salary, and his job was to collect Tibetan texts. It was very fascinating. And it was paid by the American government. It's kind of interesting. He worked for the American government for 40 years in India, and then he came back to the States. I remember when I saw him in Boston here, when he worked for Wisdom for a while. He had this house, 3-story house in Cambridge. And every room, there was the Kagyu room and the Gelugpa room and the Nyingma room and the something else. Each room was full to the top to the bottom with texts. And he slept on this little mattress. And he brought his Indian servant with him, as they call it in India. You have your servant, that means a secretary or something, Anyway, Gene Smith, he said that in the mid-60s, one of his friends called Zeno, who was one of the first students, the first Western student of Lama Zopa Namayeshi, mid-60s, in Darjeeling they met her. She was a friend of his. And he came up into Darjeeling and met them for the first time and said that he couldn't believe this English of these two lamas, Lama Zopa said he started learning English when he was 15 when he came out, 16 when he came out of Tibet. And he was, in one of these places where all the Tibetans were kept in India. And he sort of had this feeling he wanted to learn English, so he started memorising the dictionary. Because Tibetans memorise things, so that's how he learns. He tried to memorise the dictionary. And then he tried to memorise Time magazine. Because that's how you learn things. He had this feeling he should learn English. And then Lamieshi would just pick it up, And Gene said he remembered his English, and that was back then in the mid-60s. I mean, I met him in the mid-70s, and he learned a lot by then. But somehow you can understand, he said he had this remarkable way of communicating. And it's true. By the power of his own mind, I think, and his own personality, somehow he communicated. But when you see it on paper, it's very hard to understand sometimes. But anyway, he talked in a way that for me, it grabbed me, I understood somehow. It made sense somehow. He talked psychologically. So it was very helpful for my mind. So anyway, I wasn't looking for a guru. Believe me, still the idea of a guru was a shocking idea. But I remember at some point, Lama Zopa, he looked like he was kind of pure to me. He looked kind of perfect and pure, but I couldn't get him, He was just too distant in the sky up there somewhere. But Lamieshi, I got him. And I began to like Lamieshi, and I was too proud to think it to myself. I liked him, But I did initiation, stayed there for 2 months, did a retreat and everything. And then went back home to Melbourne, did some practice and everything. And then one day, halfway through the 6 months after I'd met them, this thought occurred to me, the penny dropped that, Lamieshi my guru, And I was mortified. I remember whispering to one of my sisters, Polly, I've got a guru, but don't tell anybody. Something shifted in my mind, I figured I have a guru, he's my Lama, he's my guru. Okay, so what does that mean then for me, and what does it mean? Well, I remember hearing in the teachings, of course, the necessity for a teacher, and then I remember hearing, which I really liked about Buddhism, was it's really up to me. That suited my mind perfectly. I'm happy. I always thought it was up to me anyway. Excuse me, I'm the boss, So I liked that idea, and that I had to check up. Well, that's what I liked that very much. And it was very difficult for me at that time, incidentally, because I had been, my latest, my most recent political phase was radical feminist. So it was really quite a struggle. I was a serious radical feminist. So it was really quite a struggle to hang around, have a male teacher talking like he all the time, and the she's, and then you hear about the nuns sitting in the back of the monks. It was like shocking for me. But I knew that I liked what I was hearing, even though I couldn't understand much of it. I knew this was what I wanted. And in a way, without sounding too cosmic, I really felt, I was 31 at the time, or 32, I finally found what my mind wanted, I really felt in my life I'd been looking. So I stuck it out. But I remember thinking, if I have to really check up on it, then it's logical to me that if I do, having checked, discover that, let's say, it is genuinely in its bones patriarchal against women, then of course I couldn't stay a Buddhist. Obviously not. You'd be stupid, wouldn't you? And then from my own checking about karma, And the idea of cause and effect, I remember liking that a lot. I didn't know what it meant really, but then I felt very, very attracted to that concept. So then I began to sort of think that if it's true, this idea of karma, which means that my mind is my own, which means I brought my own experiences with me, which means guess who created my own experiences, and if it was true that the world was sexist and I was seen as a this and a that or whatever, then guess who created that? Well, you got egg on your face, Robina, you must have done it. So I had to shut up, you know. So then I realised that if it's, and then secondly, that if you go from life to life and one time you're male or female or black or white or Asian, but that's all gone like a puff of smoke, and you climb into a new house next life, different shape, different colour, then obviously your mind isn't innately male, female or anything else. So that was also very kind of empowering for my mind. So I figured then if it isn't sexist in its nature, I better unpack the whole thing and try and work it out, you know. So that was helpful for my mind. So anyway, this business of Lama Yeshe being my Lama. Well, I remember during the teaching hearing these things. First, you should check carefully. The necessity for one, that seemed okay, reasonable. And then I remember two, they saying, you know, for example, the way you check the students. It's a really good way to prove, isn't it? Mm. It's really excellent. You look at the product, you know. And I remember being impressed by the students. I remember being very impressed by the couple of monks and nuns who were there. That gave me encouragement. Lama Yeshe, they say you check the Lama, you check his teachings, and then you check his behaviour, you check his reputation, you check the students. Because, you know, you can't do anything else. You can't know directly if that person's valid. So you've got other ways of getting some confidence in that person. And that sort of all made sense to me. And I sort of intuitively did that in a way. And then I went off and I did some practice and thought about all this stuff. And then slowly this idea occurred to me that Lama Yeshe was my guru, you know. And I remember, I didn't quite know what that meant. But I remember, you know, the needy part of me was all excited because now I'm going to have someone to love me, you know. And in a way, that's okay too, you know. I remember Lama Yeshe saying, we're all dying to be loved. And I think one way, you know, for me, this makes sense. Because we are so needy, we have attachment, all of us. We are desperate to be loved by other people. And I'm looking at it in a good way, you know. That's how we are. That's just how we are. So we're going to be loved by somebody. If we're going to take refuge in somebody, let's face it, we run around taking refuge in, you know, in boyfriends and girlfriends who drag us all down to hell because they're all in the same place as you, hopeless. But because we revere them and put them on, you know, put them up on a pedestal and expect so much from them, that no wonder we get devastated and disappointed because they're just like you and me. A load of rubbish, all needy and hungry themselves, you know. So there's needy me wanting you to love me, and there's needy you wanting me to love you. We're kind of propping each other up in this unhealthy relationship. I mean, how disappointing, isn't it? You know. So I remember, so if we do think of ourselves in this way as ordinary people, but given that we've got attachment, to use that in the best way, put it like this, and why not take refuge in somebody who is at least worthwhile, who won't spit your heart out back at you, who will actually respect you and see you for who you are, which of course what you're trying to do as a Buddhist is develop this person that you are. So what better person to rely upon than a person who's done that job themselves, who knows the human mind, who has developed themselves, and who then won't mess with you, who will respect you. I mean, it seems reasonable to me, you know. So I remember kind of being vaguely, intuitively thinking all that then, and feeling that... So then, of course, the needy part of me, when I went back up the next year to Internalizing Institute, I lived in Melbourne, which is sort of like going from, I don't know, Boston to Florida or something, about that distance, I suppose, yeah, a couple thousand miles. So, you know, I went back up the next year. Actually, yeah, that's right, I liked doing, my business had always been publishing and always on the propaganda side, you know, when I was a radical lefty, I was on the propaganda side and the feminist and all that stuff. Even earlier than that, we had a printing company, our family, always doing graphics and design and editing. It was just what I did, you know. So I remember when I went back to Melbourne, there was a centre in Melbourne, a little centre called Tara House, then it's now Tara Institute. And I did some work. You know the wish-fulfilling golden sun? Have you ever studied the Discovering Buddhism? Well, that's my typing. They've got the same thing. That's my typing on our little IBM Selectric typewriter back in 1976, done at Commando Printing Services. I think it's still even in the book. It's even there. That's what I typed, but I'll tell you what I did. Two funny things. One was, On the front picture of the Buddha, there's this picture of the Buddha by Lama Zopa, and underneath is a line of Tibetan. Of course I can speak Tibetan, but I had this weird idea. The picture was really rough and the words were very unclear, but I had this strange concept that Tibetan was going like Hebrew, going from right to left. So I wrote over the Tibetan words but went backwards. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I always figured that was an obstacle to why I can't speak Tibetan now. I could be all wrong. And the other thing I did, being a radical feminist, I couldn't stand all this language of all he this and he that every minute. So I changed it all to they or he and she. You know, I changed the whole thing. And then before we printed it, I decided I couldn't do that. I changed it all back to he. And that was a really big move on my part. It was a huge lesson. I couldn't believe that I did that. So it was Lama Zopa's power over me, my goodness. Lama Zopa for me was invisible. I couldn't see him. So anyway, we did this book, and I thought I was the ant's pants doing that and redesigning it and making it all nice and did it in nice spiral binding and yellow paper and everything. And then I brought it up to Internalizing Institute the next year when Lama Yeshe was there, and I demanded a meeting because I'd done all this hard work, and I wanted him to know how hard I worked. And also I had a meeting with him, and then it was sort of to inform him also that he was my guru. I didn't know you're supposed to ask. You're supposed to prostrate 3 times and make an offering, and please Lama Yeshe, would you be my teacher? Well, I informed him he was my guru. He said, yes, I know, dear. I'm still ashamed when I say that. Anyway, whatever. So he gave me a practice to do, and he gave me prostrations. He must have known I like karate because he said it's good physical yoga, dear, and it is. And he told me to do 35 Buddhist prostrations. That was my first practice for my pride, you see. And then since then, Lama Zopa has given it to me to do every morning, every night of my life, so I can't escape. So anyway, I think once I established that Lama Yeshe was my Lama, that's when the hard work started. That's when the hard work started. Because I didn't really know what a Lama meant. I had no idea. I liked Buddhism. I was all excited. I knew I'd become a nun eventually. It was like another year I went to Copan and became a nun after, because I'd broken my leg and I got the insurance. So Mr. Bill Bright sent me to Copan, broken my foot. But I remember I didn't really know what it meant, a Lama. I suppose it just showed karma, you know. But I knew I was sort of, whatever it meant I was supposed to do, I wasn't quite sure. But I knew I wanted to become a nun, so I went to Copan the next year, soon after that actually, the end of that year. And then asked Lama Yeshe if I could be a nun. And then he sent me to Lama Zopa. He sent me to Lama Zopa, it was on Losar morning, New Year morning, at 3 o'clock. And he sent me to Lama Zopa, and I kind of, anyway, Rinpoche cut my hair and gave me a name and everything. But I remember feeling quite offended that Lama Yeshe didn't do it. So I asked Lama, you know. So in the kitchen in Copan, I said, well, Lama, did you give me my name? And he said, no, he said, Rinpoche's qualified. Like I was insulting Lama Zopa, you know. Because I was sort of offended that Lama Yeshe didn't do it. So proud, I can't believe myself. Well, I can. What to do. But in a way from then on, the hard work started, you know. Because what you think of a Lama's job, you know, my Kung Fu teacher showed me Kung Fu, you know. My mother was my cooking teacher. I was just as an example, actually, of how you check up on a guru, how you find a guru, you know, a teacher. My Lama was my mother was my music guru. My mother was my cooking guru. She taught me how to make a cake. I always use that example. Let me use that example. You know, about how the checking business. I remember I was 26 at the time. I wasn't 6 when I first asked my mother to show me how to make a cake. I never liked that kind of thing. And I was in London and I was a hippie at the time. That was several phases before being a feminist. And I remember the thought I wanted to make a carrot cake. It was the first time in my life, and this is the point, it has to first arise in your mind that you want to learn something. It's obvious, it has to be you wanting it, which is the whole business, showing the nonsense of all the business of thinking a guru is a person who's going to pick you up and do whatever, you know, and you're like the victim, which is how we think of religion. You just believe in something and someone can manipulate you. But if you are the boss, if you know you have to want it, then you are the boss. And this one is unbelievably important to know. You know, you have got to be ready. So my mother, fortunately, had the common sense not to force me to make a cake. So then I am 26, I was living in London. I went home to Melbourne, not just to make a cake, but to visit my family. And then I asked her, Mum, please show me how to make a cake. Well, I'm sure she was over the moon, waiting 26 years for this time. And I finally asked her. But because I wanted it, that was the door that opened. And that has to be the first step. So often you talk to people, they say, oh, I'd love to take refuge. And you ask a little bit, and you can tell they're not even sure they're Buddhist. Or you want to meditate because someone else said so, or you think, you know, we're not clear ourselves. So this one really is where you have to do it. You've got to have this first. And there's no rush to be a Buddhist, there's no rush to do any of this. You've got to have this absolute certainty in your mind. And that is often something we do not have, because we're so addicted to what other people think of us. We do it because we think other people say we should. Most of the time we live in our heads doing what we're thinking we're supposed to do. Doing what Mummy said and Daddy said. We've internalized all these other voices. And we really haven't found our own sense of self. We really haven't found what we really want. This is a huge step, actually. It really is a big step, a massive step. And many people never take it. We just go, and in fact, I remember, I often say this one, reading this story in The Guardian, some nurse did some interview dying people and asked, and had a list of her 5 things that people regretted most in their life. And the one that was top was that they regretted not really doing what they wanted to do, not following their heart. In other words, doing what they thought they were supposed to do. And this is what attachment to reputation is, and this is the biggest attachment of all. It runs our mind every second. You start to check your thoughts. Always we're referring to what other people think. What will she think? What will he think? What is he thinking? Even as we're doing it, we're thinking of someone thinking of us doing it. That's why we try to hide what we do is bad and try to get someone to see if we do something good. We're desperate. We're desperate for approval, which is attachment to reputation, because we have no confidence in ourselves. So this is what runs most of us. And so out of fear of what other people think, we won't really even investigate what we really feel. This is a huge point. Huge. So to know it's you want it. You have to want it first. Then you will open all the doors and you will find it with absolute certainty. So that was how it was when I wanted to make a cake. My first time, I remember the moment it arose in my mind. So, Mum, please show me how to make a cake. So, this is the point now. I had never heard of how to make a cake before. I'd never read a recipe book. I'd noticed my mother doing things since a little girl, but I never took it in. So I didn't actually have any experience at all, did I, of how to make a cake. So therefore, logically, if someone had said to me, you put 16 eggs in and then you do this and that, I would not know, would I, whether they were right or wrong. I have no basis for making any decision. And that was what I learned from the Kung Fu, the karate. I did not have a sound basis for choosing. I'd never done karate. No, I had done karate before. Actually, before that. But I didn't choose for the right reason. I didn't check their karate. I didn't check the karate. Therefore, I had no proper basis. I didn't check the reputation. I didn't check the students. I didn't do enough research. I chose for the wrong reason. So with my mother, I'd chosen. And why? On what basis? I tasted her cakes. It's easy with cakes. Her peers said she was a good cake maker. That's really good. That's a really good one. Reputation is a pretty powerful one. You know, the first thing you do when you check up, we're just looking with a friend, just looking at schools in a certain area, and one school, you say, oh, that looks interesting. You read the reviews right there, instantaneous. Terrible reviews. You know, 3 out of 4 were terrible reviews. It's very easy to get reputation sorted now, you know. So my mother, her peers said she was good. I tasted my sister's cakes. They'd learned from her. They were her students. So you have to do that research. Why? Because I had no personal experience of cake making. So you have to have inferential knowledge. You have to use logic and intelligence. You do your market research. You do your due diligence, in other words. And what else can you do? Like we do with a cook, with a school, with anything. We check reputation, the people, the parents. We know this very, very well. It's exactly what we do just to choose anything in life. Well, here, if we really understand the function of a teacher in a spiritual path, in particular the Buddhist one, which talks about from here to enlightenment, it's really it's a big, fat choice you're making. And then, this is where it gets more difficult, which we're going to talk about later today, and maybe whatever, tomorrow. that, you know, it sounds so heavy to us when we hear it, that, you know, once you make a mistake with your teachers, then you're really leading yourself up garden paths for countless lives, which is kind of logical. So you've got to be so cautious. We've really got to be cautious, and we've got to be so confident. Now, I like that word confident. Look at it. Look at it. It's Latin. With faith, with trust, confide. We have to have confidence. We all know 27 people can tell you this and this and this and this, and we've got to have courage to have confidence. I remember in one centre one time where they taught a lot of philosophy, and one of the students was super intelligent. And he said, whom am I supposed to believe? This is how we think about spiritual, and about anything. It's shocking. You believe nobody. Excuse me. You do your own checking. You have to be confident. I can't stress this enough. And this is in everything. We don't do this checking. For most things, we just do what our friends say. Oh, they said it's a good idea. I don't know how do I know who's right, we'll say. We say this with religion with absolute certainty. How do I know who's right? The Christians say they're right. The Muslims say they're right. Who's right? How do I know who to believe? You don't believe anybody. You check up. You use your noggin. This is a fact, and without any doubt when it comes to a teacher. And because Buddhism now is so prevalent in the West, there are plenty of wacky people out there, people who are not qualified, who set up their own centres and call themselves Tibetan Buddhist. So you've really got to be careful. I really sincerely mean this, not trying to make you paranoid. It's inevitable, because it's so easy to do things in our world. Lots of people teach yoga, probably crummy yoga. Anybody can do it. Get a 6-month certificate, you're right there. It's so cheap now. It's good because it's flourishing, but there'll be lots of rubbish. Lots of rubbish. You know? I mean, Tibet, you'd go to these monasteries, you'd study for 30 years, you'd wait another 20, 30 years before you even have the label Geshe, and then you dare not say, I'm a teacher. You know, how they do it in the monasteries is a wonderful system. You go to the monastery, then you go to the debate yard, and you're this kid, you've got a teacher first, and then you start, as you get confident in your classes, you start to check around all the monks debating. Oh, I think I like that one. Oh, I like this one. And then you go, and you ask him, will you teach me, please? And it's just a monk who's 3 classes ahead of you, and yep, you sit in his room and he'll teach you. It's a really organic method, and you are the one who chooses your teacher. That Geshe is not chosen to teach you. You choose your teacher, you know. It's a very interesting system. But they would never dream of opening their mouth and saying they're a teacher if no one ever asked them to teach, even though they've got 30 years of knowledge. And that's something we find hard, because we're so arrogant. You know, we think we know everything. But that 30 years of study, and even some of the greatest lamas, this lama in New York is famous for his unbelievable humility. Rato Rinpoche. He's quite old now. He's one of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's gurus. He's a high Garupa Lama, okay? He's a Rinpoche in the States since the 60s, like a lot of them. He disrobed. And he was just this humble. I mean, we find their humility almost embarrassing, you know. It doesn't seem natural. It's genuine humility. And because you never show what you know. You never show what you know. You always defer to someone else. So there's this old Lama. This is in the 70s, maybe, I think. Someone who told me in the 90s I met them, they said that they'd heard about this Tibetan Lama. Oh, he's a Tibetan Lama. Oh, please teach us something. And because he's so humble, he really said, and he meant it sincerely, I don't know anything. No, go to that Lama. So they thought, oh, he doesn't know anything. So they knew him for like 15 years, hanging out with him, having cups of tea and things, but never bothered to ask him again. And then one year he took them on pilgrimage to Dharamsala, and then they saw how he was treated. They realised that there's this highest Lama, this precious jewel, for all those years, but didn't even know, because he didn't show himself. He just said no, he doesn't know anything. And of course we don't know, you've got to ask, you know. Beg and beg and beg. And this is something that we find very curious as well, because we think it's pushing. That, you know, if you really, this is why, if you really want it yourself, if you really have checked on that Lama, and you really want their teachings, you will request. He will say no. No question. Then, oh, all right, then I'll go to someone else. No, if you have checked up and you want that person, you're going to bang on his door, you know. And we all know with our ordinary attachment, when we really want something, we will get it. We will not give up. So we're not used to thinking this way. We feel embarrassed because we're worried he won't like us, and we're looking like we're pushy. And of course, we're used to everybody saying, yeah, I'll teach you, I'll teach you. So if they say no, we think, oh, well, that's it. So it's a very different whole approach, but it's based on very sound logic. It's based upon humility of the teacher, genuine humility. And of course, you don't say yes straight away, not, because it's a very Asian thing, but there's some real logic to it. Because if you really want it, you're going to ask again and again and again, you know. You don't give up. I remember I was mentioning, you know, one of the lamas that I know in one of the Western centres. He's young, very humble, but he will not accept a Western student. And I think he's very sensible because there's so much rubbish about gurus, you know, so much superstition. We have no idea what it means. Mostly it's just attachment. Then it becomes all political. Then you dump, because when it's attachment, you dump onto this person, expecting them to make you happy, expecting them to do what you think they should do, being your lama. And how dare they don't do it. You're going to sue him, you know. And I mean, the number of people who give up their lamas, and indeed sue them, because there's so much attachment, we don't know really what it means, and we don't really check carefully. We haven't really, I mean, it's very hard to get past the attachment, you know. So this lama, I mean, he's so cautious, and I think it's so excellent. He's a young geshe, you know, but very qualified. So the students who are committed to him, because he sort of technically said no, he is guiding them, there's no question, but they keep it very quiet, and it's very sincere. And you can see, you know, very deep inside them. It's very interesting to see how it's just and it's so, it can be so, anyway, go back to my mother. Cakes, use example. I wanted to make a cake. First step, I knew what I wanted. Please, Mum, show me. I'd done my checking. So when I finally got to the point of asking her, please show me, that meant I was ready. I checked, I was confident, I wanted it, and she showed me. I remember the day, it's very curious, I remember the day, the kitchen. In fact, it was an apple and walnut cake. I remember it, not a carrot cake. Because that day was vivid for me. As Lama Geshe said, you know, Lord Buddha's not here anymore. But when you, the Lama who shows you, that's what makes it real for you. And it's true. That's the point. The teaching's in the book. We can all learn in books. We can learn online. We can learn with CDs. There's no question. But when this real human being, this lovely phrase in Tibetan, this Dalai Lama's name, Tenzin, knowledge holder, a person who's got the knowledge inside them. Well, my mother was a cake knowledge holder. She was a knowledge holder. She was. She knew how to do it. I wanted it. I checked. I asked her. All the conditions came together perfectly, and she showed me how to make a cake. And that's why I remember it, because it was the first time cakes became real for me. Because this living human being, a knowledge holder, showing me, saying it, and my mind was open. Now, if I was a little girl and she'd forced me to make cakes, of course I wouldn't have taken it in. Stubborn, proud, how dare you, I don't want to learn cakes, you know. But I was ready, she showed me, I didn't argue with her, I did what she said, and I haven't made a cake for more than 20 years, but I bet I can make a good one again, because I learned it properly. And I'm not joking now, but you can almost say that's like an initiation, an empowerment. All that is my mind was ready, my mother had the knowledge, I asked her, she showed me, I received the information. More than the information, I got a taste of the experience. And it's logical. You see what I'm saying, people? That's the function of a teacher. It's not mystical. They miss the way they talk in the religion, of course. In the Buddhist, it's like this, but we think of it as only to do with Buddhism. But actually, any experience, learning anything, you go to your music teacher. You know, you've checked on them, they're valid, they've got the knowledge, you're open and you receive it. It's a logical thing, you know. But there are various steps that have to come together, various components that must come together. Then you will learn. Do you understand, people, what I'm saying? Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. And it's exactly the same with my Kung Fu. I mean, being a bit of a fanatic, I ended up doing, it was like the last round I did, when was that? It was before I was a Buddhist. And then when I was 10 years later, and I was living in London, working for Wisdom Publications, and I was 10 years later, I was 42 at the time, I wanted to do martial arts again. So I chose this, I went and checked this time, and I chose this Chinese teacher who happened to be a Buddhist, and he did Kung Fu, so I studied with Kung Fu, did learn Kung Fu. So I was doing it, like 6 days a week. So it was obvious to this man that I wanted his Kung Fu, isn't it? I mean, I was going 6 days a week after all, you know. Me and this 14-year, 19-year-old boys were like this little group. They didn't know I was this old Buddhist nun, you know. So I wore lay clothes at the time. But I mean, these two boys and me, we'd all hang out together, go to all the classes. We were like the little groupies for the teacher. Then we'd hang out at McDonald's afterwards, eat about 4 pounds of French fries because you eat your carbs, you know. Total fanatics. But it was obvious I wanted his Kung Fu. Now there's another point. I checked him. He was valid. I'd watched his classes. I'd watched his classes of kids, and it was amazing to see it. All these young working class kids really learning some inner discipline for the first time in their lives with this guy. I could really see he was a good teacher. So I wanted his Kung Fu. He was a knowledge holder in that sense. But I went 6 days a week. Obviously I wanted it. So what did he do? He pushed me. He pushed me to the limit, you know. And I didn't mind. I was proud that he'd shout at me. I didn't want to go sue him. How dare Mr. Lee shout at me. I was glad because he was pushing me to get more out of me. And this is the point. With the Lama, with the teacher, you know, what their expertise, not cooking, not Kung Fu, the human mind, okay? And that's a pretty interesting thing to know about because they can see you coming, you know? And they're not fazed by the ego. You're a little needy, little attached person thinking you're so clever. And they're kind of they're just grabbing you exactly where you have to be grabbed, showing you your mind exactly what you have to see, showing you your mind exactly. It's incredible, you know. And so, of course, they're going to show you your delusion, which is not comfortable. It's extremely painful. And they're going to push you. And they're not going to do what your attachment wants, which means they're going to reject you sometimes. Lama Zopa's style, Lama Yeshe would shout. But Lama Zopa's style is different. He's quiet. He would ignore. You know? One time I asked Lama Zopa some information. He looked at me. First of all, he said, "What are you asking me for?" And then changed the subject. And another time, he didn't even answer. This person said, "Robina's out there to see you, Rinpoche." He didn't. It's not a word. Not a word. Not a word. 4 times later, I just had to go back to my room with my egg on my face again. You know? Because this is the Lama's job. They're not there just to feed your ego, which is what we're desperate. These little needy girls and boys dying to be loved. But if we're brave enough and we've checked on that person, like my Kung Fu teacher, and I really want his Kung Fu, and I trust that what he does will be best for my Kung Fu, then even if he does shout at me, I know it's the right thing for me. And that means I've got to have confidence. I've got to have confidence. I've got to have confidence. If I just think it's, and especially with the guru business, if I just think, oh, you know, all lovey-dovey, and you sit at his feet and he's going to show you how to get enlightened and stroke you, just forget it. Excuse me. It is not like that. So if you're brave enough, they're going to show you your mind, which means you're going to see your attachment more than usual. You're going to see your anger. You're going to see your pride, and it is not comfortable. But now this is the hard part. This is where it gets tricky. And this is why we've got to be so grounded in this pursuit of a Lama, or indeed, if we've got a Lama, have made a commitment in our development of this relationship, because it's not an easy one. And I don't mean that in a kind of silly sense. It's not easy because their expertise is the human mind, and because their job is to show you your mind, which is meaning, yes, indeed, your good parts, but to help you move beyond your rubbish, which is what even my Kung Fu teacher helped me do, forcing me to see my mistakes, pushing me past my mistakes, then you're going to be shown your mistakes, and none of us like that. Nobody likes having someone ignore us or tell us off, or even just answer in a way that the ego doesn't like. So you've really got to be ready. You've got to understand, and that means you've got to have confidence. Because if someone like Lama Zopa ignores me, normal human behaviour, that's considered very rude manners, isn't it? Very bad manners, isn't it? Mm. So if I weren't confident in his qualities, if I hadn't done my checking, if I hadn't done my due diligence, if I hadn't checked up and I wasn't confident, then when Lama Zopa ignored me, then I would not misinterpret. I would realise, okay, he is my Lama, and this is the whole business of trying to see the Lama as a Buddha. I haven't even got there yet. That means I trust his Kung Fu, I trust his Dharma teachings. Therefore, he is doing the right thing for my mind. Now, the ego doesn't like to think that. And very quickly, ego will get upset if, let's say, in our relationships, the smallest thing goes wrong. We don't want to check our mistake first. And this is the major teaching with the Lama, If we think of it in general, Dharma practice anyway is this. The wisdom wing is all about seeing your own mind, not the person's action, isn't it? That's what the wisdom wing is. So until we've got some basis in understanding karma and how everything's our own karmic appearance, until we've got this in ordinary life and can, instead of looking at the person's angry words, look at your own mind. Instead of criticising the person at work, look at your own mind. Instead of blaming your husband, look at your own mind. This is stupendously difficult. If we can't even do that with ordinary people, forget trying to do it with a lama. I'm sorry, because that's what you're doing 100%. And in order to understand this, we've got to have some sense of emptiness. Some sense of karma, interdependence. We have to have. Or some, even more basic, some sense that our mind plays a role in our life. As Lama Zopa says, most of the time in the world, we don't even know that our mind plays any role at all. And what that means is we are all grasping at self-existence to the absolute degree, meaning it's all out there. I'm just this victim and it happens to me. That's exactly the way ego works. So until we've got some sense that, that what I'm seeing out there is my projection, even it could be out there. No, okay, another way. Even it could be out there. Even a person did go, you're a creep, Robina. Let's say you didn't make it up. Let's say they did do that. So projecting doesn't mean they didn't do it. Hitler did what he did. You can't say you're just projecting and said he killed 6 million Jews. He did or he didn't, one or the other. That's not the meaning of projection. The person might well have said those mean words to you. But the point is, that's their business. So what's mine? I have to ask myself, that's their business. So what's my business? My business is my response to that. My business is my response. That's the point. So it might be right, a person said mean words to you. It might be right the person was kind to you. It's not as if you're making it up. Sometimes we can exaggerate and not see it clearly. But the real point is there's two things going on here. And this is where the beginning of being a Buddhist is this. Advanced beginning of being a Buddhist is recognizing your mind plays a role. The victim just thinks everybody else does it to me and this is just reality. So the beginnings of this is, okay, she did say those mean words, but let's look into my mind, Robina. What's the response? Anger, jealous, resentful, hurt, proud. That's what we have to begin to do. And this is the toughest job because instinctively we dump it out there. It's the deepest mistake we make. So when we can begin to do this, then we can at least logically understand the way to interpret the Lama. Because the Lama, our having checked that he's valid, it is a valid person, a person worthy of my heart, whom I'm going to have faith in and confidence in, who will lead me to drag me out of my own mess, then I need to realize that everything that person does, and this is for my benefit, nothing to do with him, he couldn't care. Whatever he does, whatever he says, all he's trying to do is show me what's in my mind. So that means every time he says this and does that and doesn't do this and doesn't say that, I've got to check my mind. And this is our daily life as a Buddhist anyway. So until we can begin to understand this, forget about Guru devotion. I'm really not kidding. Forget about it. Because it's too hard. Are we communicating here?
Yeah.
I'm just raving on here, I'm sorry. I'm not doing according to the Lamb Room as usual. Do you have any questions though? We'll go on from here, we'll just see where it goes. Do you have any questions at all about anything like this, about the Lama business? Anything?
Oh, gosh.
It's for the people at home.
I understand. Microphones make me very nervous.
Oh, darling, go on.
I have some questions about how to have a relationship formally with a teacher.
Okay.
So, if somebody who I see as a teacher is a traveling teacher, when they're coming to a center, is it appropriate to contact the center ahead of time, ask for a meeting?
Oh my goodness, yes, all of these things. Of course
Okay.
it is. Oh my goodness. Okay.
The pushy thing worries me.
No, we're very worried about that.
Yes.
But that's where we've got to be brave enough to know what we want, until we know we need guidance. Okay, we've got to, in our own mind, we've got to distinguish between, is it just attachment, or is it just genuine, I want to check with my practice, I really need advice here. We've got to risk it sometimes, sweetheart. I mean, I know one time when I had a meeting with Lama Yeshe, I was dying to tell him one particular thing about my life. And he cut me off completely. He cut me off. What are you telling me that for, basically? And it was right for me. I knew that. It was correct. I knew it was correct. You know, it would have sounded quite harsh to say for another person. So you've got to risk it. If you can't tell yourself if it's attachment or it's genuine, you'll find out. So we've got to risk it, and then you might not get a meeting. I mean, you know, when like Lama's over Rimite, he's got quite a few students. So people might write a letter. I mean, at any time, I remember when at any time he's got like 2,000 letters sitting there from students, you know. And sometimes, what's wrong? You're looking over there.
I'm looking at his hand on the tripod.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall I go back? How much will I go backwards?
Oh no, I was listening.
Okay,
Mama
no.
Zopa has a lot of students.
That's right.
And he was writing a letter.
And like, sometimes 2,000 letters sitting in his folder, you know. And a friend of mine said, people, they wait 2 years for an answer. So it's up, you know, that's where, if he is your Lama, and once you put it out there, the request for a meeting, you write the letter, then you know, it's a good practice anyway with everybody, but then you just, you see what happens. Maybe you can check again, or you wait for the 2 years. It's up to, you know, it's up to the person. But of course it's appropriate to ask. It's appropriate to have a meeting first. It's appropriate to request the person to be your teacher. It's appropriate in this world, you know, with some people depending, you know, to have their email addresses and that kind of thing. It's completely appropriate. And then you see where it goes and what's needed. Totally, of course it is.
Okay.
Of course it's protocol. If you'd been in India, you'd wait 12 years, then you'd go prostrate 3 times, you might prostrate 27 times, you might take nine no's for an answer, then you know, I mean, you understand. So you just gotta, if you're confident that's what you want, then you will do what you have to do. And you learn on the way. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, yes.
Do you have any disciples yourself?
I can't think that way. Don't talk to me like that, please. Ask your question. I mean, you just did, I know. Well, don't ask me that question.
Okay. I'm still trying to figure out how one figures out who their guru should be.
Come on. You have to know what you want. You have to know, it's not mystical. You find out. You practice every day. You check the people. You check what they like. You listen to the teachings. You read the books. If you have any confidence at all in the teachings, you do some practices, and maybe you'd make aspirations, you know, to the Buddha to please guide you. This kind of thing. If prayer makes any sense too, that can also help. But darling, it's like it's not mystical. Do you have any friends? It's a serious question.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Have you ever learned anything?
I
You ever
have.
chosen teachers for things and colleges and that kind of thing?
Yes.
Well, you use your common sense. You meet some people, you feel closer to some than others, right? You like some teachers better than others, right? Well, have you ever been in love with somebody?
Yes.
Okay. So, how do I know if I'm in love? You wouldn't ask that, would you?
No.
Okay. There's a certainty there, isn't it? Okay.
You
So,
trust your heart.
there's a certainty, but based on logic, based on research, on confidence that the person is a valid. I mean, we fall in love with wacko people because we don't check, because we trust feelings, and this is part of the problem with spiritual. People think it's all about cosmic. They go to some teacher who's really charismatic and powerful. Wow, far out, he's so amazing. He must be the Buddha, you know. So we have to distinguish between getting excited and the person who's charismatic, and knowing ourselves if it's appropriate. We just got to use our common sense and trust it. Just trust. You've got to be confident. And if you're not confident, then you're not confident. You'll be confident eventually. Because if you're not confident, no one else can tell you. Well, sometimes it happens. I mean, one of my friends went to see Lama Yeshe and was convinced that he was her Lama. And he said, I'm not your Lama, he is.
Yeah.
So he sent it to the right one. that was most helpful. You understand? So you've got to take a risk.
I had one more question.
Yes.
The person who ran over your foot.
What?
The person who ran over your foot.
Yes. Bill
Did
Wright.
you ever think to yourself that that was Lama Yeshe?
Yeah, I often did actually. I often used to think Lama Yeshe manifested as Bill Bright to run over my foot, to stop me in my tracks, to get me in the right direction. I often did, yeah. So I'm very grateful to Bill
Wonderful.
Bright.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If
Yeah.
you select one guru, are you allowed to select more?
Oh, you can have dozens, darling. No limit.
Great.
Yeah, not a problem. I mean, yeah, not a problem. They often talk in the Tibetan tradition, as coming from the Indian too, they talk about your root guru, like your mummy lama. I like to call him my mummy lama, my main lama. You know? And you can have, I mean, okay, in the end, maybe we'll talk about that next week, or tomorrow I mean. We'll see how we go. There's all the teachings about the way to see the Lama, how the Lama is the Buddha, this whole attitude, we'll discuss this maybe. But in the end, you see them all as a manifestation of the Dharmakaya. You see them all as a human manifestation of the same Buddha mind, you understand? Which is a very good practice for our mind. Instead of thinking, oh, there's a big Lama, I have a medium Lama, there's a small Lama, you know. Not sort of in that way. Although you don't think like that. There's no hierarchy in your mind when you've decided they're your Lama, your Guru, your teacher. But you can still, you know, like Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe, they're my bosses in this life. On the day I met them, I knew I'd work for them as well as they'd be my Lamas, you know. They're my boss, no doubt about it. I work for them as well as everything else. They're the ones I've got the closest connection with in this life, you know, whose teachings I teach and so on and so forth. But I had many other Lamas whom I see in my mind and decide are all the same, but I mightn't see them so often. Do you understand? So there's a way of sorting all that out. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have one more.
Yes, my dear.
The guru devotion thing, I don't really understand.
No, I know.
And it makes me a little nervous. Just, I mean, you mentioned, you know, Hitler and all that. I have German ancestry. It makes me really nervous for people
So
to
what?
follow
Okay, what?
without questioning. You know, like
So,
just
starting.
doing-
Stop. Assumptions packed in every word there. So starting again. So first of all, the word guru devotion. What makes you nervous about that? Tell me step by step. What makes you nervous? What does it mean to you?
I don't know.
What have I just said so far? How does it sound? Has the way I've talked about it so far made you nervous?
No. No, just
So what makes you nervous?
I've always felt like my independence and freedom of choice and all that.
Did you hear what I said right at the beginning? Remember I said about the wrong view about the guru business? Remember I said that right at the beginning? But you're just repeating that one. Exactly that mistake.
I don't know.
No, I know, but don't know what?
I don't know what this guru business is. I'm learning.
Okay, but what have you learned from what I've said today? What have you picked up in your words from what I've said today about the meaning of
Be
guru
really
devotion?
sure about it.
Pardon?
You said be really sure about it.
And what have you learned about what the relationship would be like? From what I've been saying today, can you extrapolate anything?
Teacher-student kind of relationship.
Okay, remember in the very beginning I said when I first had the sense that I didn't want to teach it, that I had to do it all. Because I heard about gurus and I thought it was giving yourself up and doing what you just said. And I said that how that's a total, utter mistake to think that. Do you remember me saying that?
Mm-hmm.
You do?
Yeah.
And that that's not valid?
My mind's cloudy. That's all I got.
So tell me what you think it means, having a teacher. Whatever you feel at this moment in time based on what you've read, what you've observed, tell me what you think it means having a spiritual teacher.
Teachers in general or gurus or...
A spiritual teacher.
I think it
Tell me what you
means
think it means.
someone who helps you on a spiritual path, whatever your path is.
And what would a spiritual path, in particular, what would be their knowledge? What would be their expertise? Like a kung fu teacher, their kung fu is their expertise. Cooking, like my cooking guru, my mother was cooking. What's the expertise of a spiritual teacher as you understand it so far?
Hopefully to hook you up with a higher power.
Oh, okay, now we're getting somewhere. What's this higher power business? What's that for you?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Why'd you say that then?
Another teacher of mine used those words.
I know, but I'm talking to you here. I'm asking you what you think. What do you think the purpose of having a spiritual... What for you is spiritual practice? What do you want a spiritual practice for?
Well, it feels really good.
But what is it that this feels good? What is it you're trying to
It
accomplish?
feels physically good.
Okay, but what are you
Some
trying
of
to
these-
accomplish, sweetheart? What's your name?
Kurt,
Kurt. Tell me what you're trying to accomplish having a spiritual path, Kurt.
to get where I'm supposed to be.
And what's that look like, do you think?
I don't know.
What qualities would there be that you say are spiritual that you'd want to have?
Happier life,
Okay, good. Go on, what else?
free from afflictions,
Good. Afflictions meaning?
pains, craziness, anything like that.
Anger, jealousy, depression.
Right.
Free of those.
Yes.
And so full of the opposite, which would be?
Happiness,
Okay.
bliss,
Go on.
comfort.
What about love and compassion?
Those two.
Okay. So a person, a guru then for you would be a person who will help you cultivate the goodness in you and lessen the neuroses. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what's this higher power business all about then? Where's that coming to it?
I'm new to Buddhism. I've only been coming here.
I know, darling, it's okay. You don't need to defend yourself in any way. I'm just
Okay,
interested to hear what you're saying. Well, you said the word, so what do you think? Is that meaningful for you? Do you
Yes.
want to find a higher power?
Yes. Anything spiritual that has deep meaning for me is a higher power. I link with that.
Is this higher power a person or what?
Could be.
Is this, you want to become this higher power?
Just part of the flow.
What, darling?
Just part of the flow.
What does that mean, sweetie?
Wherever my place in line is, good.
So what's this, so you mean, so that you sound like a Christian, you sound like you like God then?
I'm
You
not
sound like you have
Christian,
faith in
I
God.
don't really know.
What, darling?
You can use the word God if you like, but
I'm
I'm
asking-
not Christian. So,
Okay. So what about the Buddha? You heard about, what do you think about the Buddha? Is he a higher power?
I'm still learning, definitely,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So then why would it, if you want a person who is qualified in love and compassion
Mhm.
and has gotten rid of afflictions, and you found that person, and then you wanted to get them to show you how to develop that part of yourself, why does that make you nervous?
Because, like, what if they ask me to do something I don't want to do? That's
But
very
why would a
uncomfortable?
teacher ask you to do something you can't do? If you're learning cooking, the cooking teacher would have to be a reasonable cook, would they not? Would you agree? My mother had to be a good cook. And that means she has to know what I know. That means if she's a sensible cook, she'll teach me according to my pace. Would she not?
Yes.
And would my Kung Fu teacher do the same
See,
thing?
I wasn't
Now
really-
listen.
I'm listening.
Would my Kung Fu teacher do the same thing? Teach me according to my capacity. If they're a valid Kung Fu teacher.
Right.
And if a maths teacher knows, they see that you're grade 2, they'll teach you according to grade 2, won't they?
Yes.
You wouldn't have fear they might teach you grade 6, would you?
Bad teachers might.
Then okay, what does that say? That you better check first before you choose the wrong teacher, isn't it, sweetheart?
Right.
So the onus is on you, isn't it?
Yep.
So if you are the boss and you have to check the teachers, you have nothing to be nervous about, do you? The only reason you're nervous is you jump in the deep end like most people think was spiritual. Wow, far out, he must be special. And then you get nervous because you haven't got a clue if they're valid or not. So when you are confident, Kurt,
No, I usually know.
when you are confident, Kurt,
Mhm.
there is nothing to be afraid of.
Okay.
Does it make sense though?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I was just thinking, like, if you were my guru, you said, go to Australia and catch alligators or something.
And why would a person do such a stupid thing as that?
I don't know.
You call that spiritual? That sounds to me like idiocy.
Or a bad teacher.
Kurt, are we communicating?
Yes, very much.
Thank you. Good. So keep trucking, honey.
Thanks.
I think Kurt helped me realize that I think I share some of that same anxiety.
Well, that's because we mystify religion. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. That's why I keep talking about cakes and music and kung fu.
While I understand from what you're saying, it's important to have confidence in this teacher, right?
This is
if you
the
don't have
point.
confidence, right? But I fear that I don't have confidence in myself to be able to choose
Well
the
then,
correct
one
teacher.
step at a time, honey. You're going to have to just get through that and you're going to start to grow up. Are you not?
Yeah.
That's right.
I
Keep
have to have
trucking.
confidence in my own ability first
Right.
to be able to
Just
figure it
keep
out.
moving, baby.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm from out of town, so I don't know how to arrange a meeting with you, but I'd like to have a meeting with you before tomorrow is
Like
over.
public.
I don't know how else to do it.
He's the boss, Sean. He's the boss. Ask Kevin. He's the spiritual program coordinator.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Good, darling.
This conversation, and actually your question, reminded me of something that Ven Robina told us many years ago. We were talking about having teachers and having them come, and the concern about, well, we don't want to be too pushy. Well, she told us very simply, if we want for a teacher to come, we have to create the causes and conditions for them to come. They're not just going to show up one day, miracle, oh, yes, this is exactly what we're looking for. We've got to take it from our side. So the steps that you're taking and asking this way, that's exactly what was needed. Thank you for doing
No,
that.
it's sort of, that's the one I remember there's a friend of mine, people say it to us, they say, oh, you must go out for a meal one day. And you say, yes, I'd love to go out for a meal one day. Well, 27 years later, they're still saying the same thing. But when they finally say, let's make a date, let's go out for a meal, that's different. So we've got to know the difference between wishing for it and stating it so we make it happen. That's the point, isn't it? That's the one of asking. That's the one of asking. It's so important. You know, you go to a shop and I love an ice cream. You're looking at the sky, I really like an ice cream. And the guy's waiting there, I'll serve you an ice cream, just ask me. In other words, it comes down every time to knowing what you want. And that's embarrassing to us because we are so worried what people think. But, you know, and we mostly, then our problem is, we're too scared to say what we want. Because we think, oh no, that's not possible. So you've got to have courage, it's true, you've got to be confident. And the thing is, even if you want to kill your father, you've got to know what you want. You've got to know you want to kill him. Then, of course, you check, is it valid to want that? We've got to know what we want first. Then we can sort out, is it right or wrong to want it? We've got to have courage to go to that point, you know. What do I want? It's very powerful, that, you know. We really do need that. Okay, what else, people? Come on. 8:15, we've got a whole 45 minutes here. Yes.
Ven Robina.
Yes.
I remember Geshe Tinley saying to us,
Yes.
the effort you make in your practice is the blessings of the Guru.
So, start the first part again.
The effort that you put into your practice
Yes.
is the blessings of the Guru.
Okay, all these complex statements.
Then I know, but,
How do you understand that?
well, I'll tell you my story.
Okay, good.
And Sean knows this. I had taken refuge vows from Geshe Soda.
Okay.
And I wanted that very bad.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm going to teachings.
Uh-huh.
And about 2 years later, he offered lay vows. And I wanted that too.
Uh-huh.
He wouldn't give it to me.
Uh-huh.
Not without talking to him. Okay.
Is what?
Not without meeting him and discussing
Sure,
it.
sure.
Because I don't think he really knew who I was.
Right.
That I'm only here a few times a month.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful meeting. Wendy Cook and Dom Cho set up a meeting with me, and I talked to Geshe Soga. And I pleaded my case. I really want lay vows. I think I could do this. I've already had refuge vows, you know.
Uh-huh.
And he said, okay. He said, but you have to see me as
That's right.
as your guru.
Exactly. That's right.
You have to do that.
That's right.
Otherwise, don't do it.
That's right.
And so that was the deal.
Yeah.
And my question would be, now that he's gone,
Uh-huh.
the effort I make in my practice, I feel, like Geshe Tenley said, is the blessings of Geshe Soga.
Uh-huh.
And how do you, the guru, like Lama Yeshe is gone,
Yes.
and it's a void.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how you fill that void,
Uh-huh.
except by practicing.
Uh-huh.
I went back to the other gurus, many gurus that you could have, but I always feel that the one I took my vows from
Yes. Right.
is my,
Your heart level.
yes,
Well, there's a whole, what's your name?
Bill.
Please, thank you, Bill. There's a whole bunch of things there, okay? So the first one is this, his Geshe saying to you, you must see me as your guru. This brings the point now that this commitment from our side that to the person we take 8 Mahayana precepts from, the person we take refuge commitments from, the person we take the 5 lay vows, not to mention bodhisattva vows and tantric vows, any of those serious kind of it's commitments, you must check the person and you must be you must have checked that person, be confident, and know that this now is one of your spiritual teachers. You know, and that's something very often because, anyway, whatever, but that is a crucial one. And of course that gets us to the next step when we start to really seriously practice, which is where the blessings come in, is where we now start to cultivate the view that that guru is the Buddha. And I think whether we get onto this tonight or we go more into that tomorrow and the commitments and the qualifications and this kind of thing, we'll go into the nuts and bolts a bit maybe tomorrow. But that's really, that's very serious, you know. Yeah, you've got to really have that kind of confidence. So it doesn't always follow, in your case it might be that, it doesn't follow that the person you take your vows from is your main Lama, but it might happen to be for you what you're expressing perhaps that he is your main Lama. Is that what you're suggesting? Because you have discussed it.
A lot of respect for that, for him, yes.
Geshe Tsoka.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's your mummy Lama, you think? Your root Lama.
I would think so.
Your root Lama. Okay, that happens to be, he's also the one you took refuge. It doesn't follow that it's the same one. You understand that? If in your case it happens to be.
Yes, well, I've been coming for a few years before
Yes,
I took a vow.
sure.
So
I understand.
listened to it many, many times.
Of course, exactly. So then as to so then the next point to bring up, as you're saying, is that he's passed away. And so in my case too, Lama Yeshe, my main Lama, Lama Zopa also my main Lama, now they're the same for my mind, that's another discussion. Lama Yeshe passed away 30 years ago, you know, 1980, yeah, so 28 years ago. So this is, I think, where having a grounding in the teachings about what Buddha is, meaning the Dharmakaya, the Buddha mind, consciousness when it's fully enlightened, pervading the universe, and that there, in a sense, is one Buddha mind. That's it. There can be a million trillion emanations of the Buddha, but there's one Buddha mind. So the practice, and this takes just time, it doesn't come intuitively to us, we have to learn the teachings, which means study the teachings, about how to think. It's like anything, you can't just intuitively play music, you've got to learn to know what musical thoughts to think so your poor fingers can do the job, you know. So we have to learn about, especially in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition where they're taught extensively, and I'd say more specifically in the Gelupas, no, in all of them, but I'd say among many of the Lamas, they don't teach in depth. And I happen to say I would say Lama Zopa Rinpoche is one of the few of the Lamas who teaches it in depth in the way that Lama Tsongkhapa taught it. So if any of you in this room do want to have the classical teachings on the meaning of Guru devotion, all the different variations of the approaches and the understanding of what it means and who, all of this, I can't recommend more highly than to study the book of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's Heart of the Path, which Nick Rebush publishes. Lama Yeshe was in my archive. It's a compilation of Lama Zopa's teachings straight from the Lamrim, which is Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. And he's one of the few, I mean, you don't hear this very much from His Holiness, because His Holiness teaches at a much broader level, both on the philosophical level or on the Lamrim. He just touches on these points. And many of the Lamas, because it's just been cautious, because Westerners are so neurotic, we're so attached, and it's ridiculous, you know, we can misunderstand all this stuff. But Lama Zopa is one of the few who really does teach in depth. So I would say anybody who is already committed to a teacher and wants to really strengthen and deepen that and know where to go with it rather than just have a gooey feeling, and indeed to not just have a void because the body is no longer there, you've got to study those teachings. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And so the more I can say for myself, Lama Yeshe having passed away, of course at the time it was grief losing that person, you know. But I remember, but because, yeah, but the way I think of, and this, okay, so having the teachings about the Dharmakaya, the Buddha mind, how the Guru is a manifestation of the Buddha, all that business which takes time, then the real point, and you mentioned the word, is when you do your practice. And as we know, in all the practices coming from the Vajrayana, which is the essence of the Tibetan Buddhist way of practicing, where you visualize the Buddhas, the key practice is to visualize the Buddha as the manifestation of your Lama's mind. And that's what keeps the Lama present and close. And that I can say without any question. I think of Lama Yeshe in the present tense, you know. And I think that's what makes it close. Otherwise, it is just this void, and it's just this person whose body we were attached to. Because if we have any confidence that they are the Buddha, then their mind is not ceased. That is, and that for me, I just, you know, one grows in confidence in that. And so there's no void as far as I'm concerned, you know. When I think of Lama, when I edit Lama's teachings, which I'm doing now, when I see him or I hear him, or even recently when I listened to that BBC interview with Lama Ursel, very, very sweet interview, you know, about his own relationship with Lama Yeshe, who he's said to be the reincarnation of. It's kind of interesting. You know, it's so interesting, so sweet, that it's just, yeah. We have to study the teachings. That gives us the ground, and then it's the practice of these practices. And that's where devotion, what Kurt quite means by devotion, have you been a Christian, Kurt?
No.
Okay, so anybody in this room has been a Christian and had devotion in God? Yeah, okay. So me too. I mean, I was in love with God, in love with Our Lady, in love with Jesus, in love with a lot of them, you know. So that, for me, devotion, there's no difference. In that sense, it's kind of interesting. There is no difference in the way you have a person out there whom you refer to, whom you are devoted to, whom you see as perfect, and of course in the Tibetan, in the Buddhist tradition, whom you wish to become like, is the main one. So that's why I like to use the analogy of ordinary things. Like if I'm wanting to, you know, I wanted my Mr. Lee's Kung Fu. I wanted his Kung Fu. I went to his class every day. So it's like I was trying to emulate Mr. Lee. He was showing me how to find my Kung Fu, but I wanted his Kung Fu, which helped me get mine. That's for me the way the relationship with the Lama. You know, I want to be Lama Yeshe. I want to be like Lama Yeshe. I mean, many people who haven't met Lama Yeshe, let's say, for example, because I'm his student, people often say to me, and Lama's over too, oh, you remind me of Lama Yeshe, you know. Well, it's inevitable. I mean, anybody who knew Kung Fu, and if they knew Mr. Lee, they could tell when they saw me that I was Mr. Lee's student. It's obvious. It's hardly rocket science, you know, because I learned it from Mr. Lee. So this is the key thing about the Guru too, and from our point of view, the wish to become the Buddha. And this is where this is just where the human heart comes into it. We've got a human heart. We all are dying to be loved. We're dying to love. And so this person, not some abstract concept in the sky, but this real living person in a human body, whom we want to be like, whom we want to become. As Pabanka Rinpoche said, you better choose your guru very carefully. You're going to end up like them. You understand? So it's a very human thing. And we are human beings. We're not living in the sky, you know? So we need this so badly, and that's why we need to choose so carefully. And then we've got to just, it's a very real thing of a real relationship, of real devotion, of real love, of opening your heart and of trusting, you know. And that's our job. Lama Yeshe can love me till the cows come home, but if I don't do my part of it, his hands are tied. Mr. Lee the same. He provided his Kung Fu every day. It's up to me to show I want it, and the more I wanted it, the more I received it. You could say the more he gave it, but the more I was open to receiving it. And that's what the practice is. That's the real practice every day of Guru devotion, Kurt. It's our job. Lama Yeshe died 28 years ago, Kurt. He can't tell me to go and fight alligators in Australia. So my real relationship is with him in my mind as a living being, whom I use as my reference point for the Buddha, whom I want to become like, whom I visualize and think about when I do my practice. So really Guru devotion is really my practice. And I just use him, if you like. That's an interesting way to put it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
And our hearts need nourishing. This is what devotion means. We've got to open our hearts. That's why I used to love reading all those Catholic saint stories, you know. Especially Saint Teresa, when she'd fly to ecstasy off, you know, she'd levitate and everything with ecstasy and her love with God. I mean, it makes sense. It's the same kind of thing. I'm not kidding. But that's why, if you're going to have a person in your life, who is this, you had better check very carefully, because you're going to end up like them. Which is meaning the onus is on us to check up. And then having checked, and then having requested, and then having been accepted, then the hard work starts, baby. Because, you know, it's not going to be comfortable seeing your own rubbish mind. Because we've given them, it's like we've just done a contract. You've written a contract with your guru, and they're going to show you your mind, and you're going to do what they say. Best you can. You shake on it. So we've got to keep our part of the contract. If they'll do their part, we'll do our part. And we respect contracts, you know.
It's like when we took lay vows.
Yeah.
Selga said there are 5. You only have to take one.
That's
That's
right.
the one to abstain from intoxicants.
That's right.
Because the others will just go. If you break that one, you'll do all the rest.
There you go, that's right.
But and since that day, I've kept my commitments.
Well, there you go, well done.
I mean, out of respect and
Yes,
love for him.
that's right. There you go. Yes.
So you mentioned this. What is the relationship between Lama Yeshe and the relationship you had with Lama Yeshe, and now the relationship with Lama Osel? the Tolkas?
Well, I don't have a relationship with Lama Ursula because he's not a Lama yet, as he keeps insisting himself. That's why he refuses to be called Lama. He's being so humble. He's finding out who he is. He's 28 years old, you know, he's finding out what he has to be in this life. But the way it is for me is like this. Okay. I try to understand the teachings about Buddha mind, Dharmakaya, omniscient mind, pervading the universe, seeing everything. That's the absolute guru, the absolute Buddha. That's the term they use, okay? So I'm attempting to understand that, have some confidence in that. Then there are the emanations of that consciousness, all these different forms and shapes that I have a connection with. So there was Lama Yeshe, was the one who grabbed my heart, right? So then he passed away. So this new baby got born. And I remember, okay, I'll tell you about my first meeting with Lama Ursula, actually. I call him Lama Ursula, even though he doesn't want to be called Lama, but I can't help it, sort of thing. It's okay. Lama Ursula. So I remember, okay, I was in London working for Wisdom Publications, and it was 1980, what was it, 85, and I'd heard that he'd been born, this child had been recognised, and he was by that point, I think, 14 months old. And he'd been recognised when he was, 18 months old. He'd been recognised when he was 14 months old. I heard about the meeting, and His Holiness had met the boy, and he'd been formally recognised, and as His Holiness said, he will show from his own behaviour who he really is as time goes by. Because they have this whole process, which maybe you understand, about how they find, you know, the Lama. So he was formally recognised, and then Lama Zopa Rinpoche announced, you know, put little robes on him and said, announced, here's the reincarnation. And so when it was 4 months later, when he was 18 months old, that I heard that he was in Europe. Lama Zopa was in Europe teaching. And I remember at the time, my main practice was to do my work. I was the editorial director of Wisdom Publications. Nick was my boss in London, okay? And I heard that Lama Zopa would be in Holland teaching. But I remember thinking, before I met Lama Ursula, I remember thinking I wanted it to be an auspicious meeting. I didn't want to just meet him out of all attachment. Because I did make a strong wish in my mind, however he turned out, I wanted to see him as my Lama. It doesn't follow. Many people I know who are Lama Yeshe students don't feel close to Lama Ursula. They don't. So I knew I had to make an effort to kind of make this leap, because it's not the form of the person that I knew, you know. But I wanted the meeting to be auspicious when I did meet him eventually, and I wanted him to become my Lama in that life. I wanted to receive teachings from him. So I remember thinking, I remember thinking I wanted the meeting, the first meeting, to be very auspicious. Thinking this way, I didn't want to muck it up somehow. So I'd heard that Lama Zopa would be in Europe, he was going to be in Holland, which is just across the English Channel, you know. And I thought, great, I'd go to those teachings over the weekend. And then I heard that Lama Ursula would be there. And I remember feeling very happy about that. That was like a bonus. So I went to Holland, and I was in the boat, getting this canal, on the last bit of the canal to get to the centre, and I suddenly remembered I didn't have an offering. And I always remember that Lama Zopa Rinpoche talking about how he first met Lama Yeshe. He was 14 years old, 15 years old, and a mutual guru kind of put them together. And he said he was very reluctant to go to this particular teaching of Lama Yeshe. And he said he went and had the teaching, but he said he didn't understand a word that Lama Yeshe said. And he said he didn't have any offering. And he said he felt that first meeting with Lama Yeshe, who became his main Lama for the rest of his life, he spent the rest of his life with Lama Yeshe, he said that he felt that was an inauspicious meeting, and because he didn't have an offering, that was one of the main causes for why he had very few teachings from Lama Yeshe in that life. Okay. So I remember thinking I wanted the meeting to be auspicious and I wanted to make an offering. Well, I was just about at the centre, and I remembered, oh my God, I haven't got an offering, you know. So then I remembered I had this crystal mala, not now, that I'd had, that Lama Yeshe had blessed, that I liked very much. And also I had gotten His Holiness to bless. I remember in 1982, Lama Yeshe asked 10 of us to be security guards for His Holiness during a meeting in Europe, a tour in Europe for 6 weeks to a bunch of FPMT centres. And Lama Yeshe chose 5 women, and I was one of them, and 5 men. And I remember we travelled around with His Holiness. I was a nun, but Lama Yeshe made us wear lay clothes. I had hair at the time, and I kind of thought I looked like a proper lady, so I put lipstick on, we had these nice clothes and everything. And Lama Yeshe always used to laugh. He said, I think I like you better like that. You know? Anyway, we travelled around with His Holiness. It was an amazing experience, seeing how people just loved His Holiness, and the Pope, you know, meeting him, and the Mayor of Rome in bliss, and these people in tears. It was just very interesting to see. So anyway, I remember, excuse me, fixing up my underclothing. I remember, excuse me. Okay, I remember this mala I had. Actually, I've got that picture. No, I haven't got it here. We had a big group photo of with His Holiness, and I was on the ground, and His Holiness just behind me, and I had my mala, and I put it on His holy feet. I wanted to bless my mala, you know, so I had it on His Holiness's feet. I felt very happy about that. So I had this lovely mala that I really liked, and I thought, great, I'll offer that to Lama herself. So I got to the centre, and I walked in at the back of the room. So pretend that I'm coming in the room here, and Lama Yeshe, there's Lama Zopa sitting on the throne where, what's your name again?
Dan.
I'm sorry. Dan is, and he's facing out, and then we're all sitting both sides. You know how you have both sides? And the Lama's sitting there. So there's the door, and I come in the door, and I'm doing my 3 prostrations. I was a bit late. Lama Zopa started the teaching. And then I heard this child, and I thought, oh, this is auspicious. And even as I'm walking in, that must be Lama, and I'm prostrating to him. So I thought that was auspicious. So then I didn't know where to sit, and a monk sitting up here called me up. So I came up here, and I sat here, and there's Lama Zopa. And then suddenly I realised there's this child here, you know, in the lap of a nun. And I realised it was Lama Ursula, and I feel embarrassed even talking about it. But he was 2, okay? And my little heart was beating. My heart was beating. I mean, this is ridiculous. And I was an old lady, and he's 2. My heart was beating. My heart beats now when I think of the story. So I was suddenly embarrassed, and I couldn't look at him. His little feet were sticking out at me. He's in Gloria's lap, and he's sucking on this bottle, you know. And his feet are poking here. And I suddenly became conscious of him being there. And then I remember he took the bottle out of his mouth, and I saw it, you know, like this. And he's going, and he's looking at me. I can hear him, I can feel him boring into me. And he's going, I'll never forget, kind of talking to me. But I couldn't look, I was embarrassed. And then he sat up, and he had all these things on his table, books and things. And then I had this, my mala, right, but I'd forgotten to give it to him. So then he starts picking things up off his own table, like a book, and he put it on my table. And then he gave me one of his shoes, and he gave me another shoe. Then he gave me another book. And then he gave me a piece of gold string. And then he gave me some crumbs. So I thought, okay, some crumbs. I ate the crumbs. More crumbs. So I ate the crumbs. The little gifts kind of flying across, you know, and I'm taking all these gifts, feeling embarrassed. And then I remembered my gift. So I was embarrassed, so I took my mala off and sort of went like this, you know, and put it in his lap. And then he gets sat up, and he looked over at my things here that he'd given me, and he selected one of them, and he put it back on his table, and then he took my mala. Oh, it's a good sign, leave it. It's a good sign. It's a good sign. Purification. Collective purification. And then he put his gift back onto his table, and then he picked up my mala, and he put it back in my lap. And I remember I had the feeling he was saying, you don't need to give me anything, it's all right.
Oh.
And then he lay back, and he farted. And then he started, that was the end. Oh no, sorry, I missed something, the most important. It's a very embarrassing story, isn't it? He's 2, you know. So finally, before he did the fart, after he lay back, and he put his mala on my lap, I then finally looked at him. I looked at his little eyes. And how do I know it's Lama Yeshe? I have no idea. But all I know is, whoever this person was, he was kind of cool, you know. And he felt like about 1,000 years old. His eyes boring into me, you know. And then he laid back and farted. Sucked on his apple juice. That was the end of the meeting. And I had the feeling that I could have walked up and gone back to London and felt quite happy. So that was when I met Lama Yeshe, Reincarnation. So I don't know if he's Lama Yeshe. I look at this hippie now, he plays his drums, he's more hippie than any 60s hippie I've ever met. Making movies and hanging out and playing drums, and he's not looking like he's got any responsibility, and he's not doing any job, and you understand? With his whiskers and his things and his tricks and his this and his that, so I have no idea. I've only met him, I met him a few times after that. I had to be his like take care of him in Copan Monastery. And he was so rude to me, I cannot tell you. He called me Annie Nervous. He's the only person who's ever called me on my speed. He would all the time talk about Annie Nervous. Oh, here comes Annie Nervous. Why are you so nervous? He would steal my things. I had these nice red leather gloves. He took my gloves, he took my things. He never did anything I told him to do. He was very, very naughty. I met him when he was 2. I remember before that. He was 7 then. And when he was 2, and I was in Melbourne, at the centre there, and I was his cook. He was there for like 2 weeks. And I was his cook. And I have to say, that's another thing. It was like being around the lamas. I was completely out of my brain. I didn't know whether I was Arthur or Martha, like we say in Australia. I felt like I was cooking for Lama Yeshe. He was completely, he didn't speak a single word, but he was like ruthless. I had a wrong coloured jacket on one day. He refused to talk to me. He just said, no. Then I put my right jacket on. He approved of me. When he wanted his food, he'd just go, yum, yum. Completely bossed me around. And I was like, completely flushed, overworked, worried. It was in this centre in Melbourne where we had this great big industrial washer. Used to be a school. And I washed his little robes so often they shrank. I remember the nun was so upset with me because his little gold Tibetan dress shrank because I washed it so often. It was brocade, you know. So I don't know who he is, but that's experience. So okay. And I met him one time since he's big. In Spain. In Italy, no, in France. When he was making a movie there. And he went to give me a hug and I felt completely embarrassed and didn't hug him. So that's about it. I don't know. But I have confidence. If Lama Zopa says it and the Dalai Lama says it, well, good enough for me and we'll see what happens, isn't it? I pray every day that he becomes Lama Tsongkhapa and teaches. I'll from Mangalore every day to him. Yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question, Bill? Oh, you did, buddy. You asked the question. I forget who asked the question.
Right.
Oh, you did. Sorry. Yeah, go on.
Have you seen the movie?
Which movie?
The one also made?
Haven't, no.
It's great.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I must see it then. Thank you. I'll watch it. Thank you. Is there anybody else? Any questions? Excuse me. Anything else? Yeah, here, look, Mike. So, when did Geshe Silka pass away?
2010. November 21st, 2010.
2 years.
2 years.
So haven't found anybody yet? Haven't found anybody yet. Is anybody requesting and asking? And have you done a prayer to request the reincarnation and all those kind of things? Who does it? Have you not done any of that? Sean? Nobody's done that? Asking people to write prayers to request him to come soon?
No. My understanding is that
Yeah.
he would not come to the Tulku system.
Who said that?
Geshe Silka.
I don't believe it. Excuse me. What's all this thing about knowing what you want and asking? I beg your pardon. Excuse me. Excuse me. Do you, okay, if he's your Lama, may I ask you if you'd like to see him again?
Yes.
Okay, then how about asking? How about asking, you people? Go, who's his guru? Is he alive? Why don't you ask Lama Zopa Rinpoche to ask somebody? That you request a prayer to be done that he please kindly come back very soon because you desperately need him. Good Lord. This is exactly the point we've been asking, Sean. Request. May I suggest? Whoever would like, his students. Doesn't have to be coming from Sean because he's the boss. Whoever is a student. You get together and you request, please. You knock on his door. I mean, up to him what he wants to do, but you've got to ask. This is, okay, this is very interesting. The 7-limb prayer. Requesting the Guru to stay and requesting the Lama to teach are the most important. If we understand the role of the Lama, okay, we're going to talk about more of this tomorrow. But this is the one again of knowing what you want and asking for it. If you don't ask, you won't get. As Lama Zopa says, everything exists on the tip of the wish, the aspiration. You've got to want it. If you don't repeatedly request the teachings, repeatedly request the holy beings to come back and be around us and never leave us until samsara ends, excuse me, this is the cause. You see, we're so used to self-existence, we think, oh, well, it'll come along and they'll just do it for me. God is perfect and God will do it. And that's the teaching in Christianity, and that's fine. But not here. We have got to create the cause, as Sean pointed out himself. And I can't stress this enough. I mean, Riba Rinpoche, Holy Riba Rinpoche, one of Lama Zopa's gurus, when he, you know, in Lama Chopa, we do that special request verse 3 times. He said, when you do that verse, you visualize yourself on the ground at the feet of your Lama, holding the hem of his robe, begging him. So this is the requesting that we need to do. Otherwise we won't. I mean, wanting anything is the cause for getting it, including even wanting another human birth. You know, as Lamas over said, I mean, the Lamas say in the teaching, you've got to have the merit to get a human birth, but you've got to have a strong attachment to getting a human birth. Please don't misunderstand. We really don't get the one of requesting and wanting. We think it's attachment. We become all these passive, not wanting anything and accepting, oh, he said he doesn't do this, you know. Excuse me. You've got to know what you want, and you better ask. You won't get otherwise. You have to create the cause. Sean said it perfectly himself. He fell into his own trap. Anyway, it's not his understanding of it. He disagreed with you. He disagreed with you. He said, no, that's not the understanding. So there you go. But that's not the point. That's not the point, Sean. 9:45. Who else? Where? Yes, sweetheart.
I think you already answered this a second ago, but there's kind of a thought about how to reconnect with one's guru after they passed.
Yes.
And with that feeling of the heart being so sad.
Yes.
I was thinking that one can maybe ask for another one. Another guru.
You look, one husband dies and you get another one, sort of thing.
Well, not that you get another one, but that you can sort of start to cultivate the aspiration.
Of course, darling. Listen.
Cultivate the aspiration for another one, so that you don't have that heart sickness about.
Well, I know, but I think I would suggest that's a mistaken way to think, though, because it's more based on attachment. And what I'm saying here, when we're just discussing with Bill, the more we think about the meaning of the Dharmakaya, the absolute guru, and the more we do our practice every day, visualizing the Buddha as the guru as the Buddha, then there's no way you feel lonely. There's no way you feel like it's empty. That's just I'm not trying to be cruel now. Of course, there's a sadness there, but it can be enriched and nourished by our own practice, by the deity practices. That is my only, I don't even do that much. I'm not saying I'm a great practitioner, but that makes absolute sense to me. And the other thing that I think the relationship with the Lama, I have to say this too, that is so meaningful and reasonable and sensible and brings it down to earth, is I talk to the Lamas all the time. It's exactly when I was devoted to God. I talk all the time to Lama Zopa Lama Yeshe. Not just formal prayers, oh, you pray to the Guru, please come Guru. It's too formal. You just talk. I talk. They're like there, present, vivid. Now that doesn't, not everybody has that experience with their lamas. They don't feel that kind of, but that for me is absolutely crucial. Otherwise you will feel lonely. Because if the Guru is the Buddha and the Buddha's mind is pervading everywhere, then the Guru is here. And that's a fact. But we have to have confidence in that. And we have to feed that part of us. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Does that make sense? Good, Tom. So what else? Anything? Or was that enough for tonight? Yes, Tommy.
So I was wondering if you could say something about the process of through working with an external guru, like coming to a place where through that relationship, through that experience, then one can start to experience like every aspect of their, experience as like a manifestation of the Dharmakaya, or like through working with an external.
I'm so sorry, John. I'm a bit lost. Sorry.
So I'm talking about like through working with an external guru, like so working with like your personal teacher.
So you mean if you're a center and the Lama who teaches there, and you come to their teachings every day? Is that what you're talking about?
That's one way that the relationship could be. Yes.
So what do you mean by through working with them?
Well,
physically?
having a relationship with
a person who's in a living human form.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Like
whether they're there or whether they're distant, and whether you communicate with them, it means just developing a relationship with that person.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, because you had mentioned about like seeing the teacher as a manifestation of the Dharmakaya.
Yes.
And how like when like if you have a few gurus, like you can come to see how there are like all a manifestation of the Dharmakaya.
That's right.
So what I'm talking about is like through that process of working with one or a few.
So through that process, I'm very confused about this.
All right. So it's through your experience of having a relationship with one or a few
gurus. Okay, so you've got several people who are in human form, whom you're calling your guru, and you go to their teachings and you have a relationship with them, meaning, you mean they write emails to you, they write letters, or do you practice seeing them as the Buddha every day?
Right. That,
Practice.
Yeah. All,
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, all of
Cultivating your guru devotion.
cultivating your guru
Okay,
devotion.
so then, question?
Then, like, how that experience would broaden to see, like, all aspects of your experience as an interaction with your guru. Like,
I don't
as
understand that at all. That part, I don't understand that.
Okay, so I guess what I'm asking is like the relationship of working with a teacher, like having a relationship with your teacher, like how that transitions into starting to experience everything as a relationship with your teacher.
I don't understand.
Okay.
What do you mean by everything is a relationship?
Like,
What do you mean by that? That's not clear. I'm so
like-
sorry.
I'm trying to think how to
I
explain.
know, yeah.
I'm trying to say.
So like everything that you experience day to day is
Right,
something
like the
that's guided
internal
by
guru
your
becomes manifest, so like you're starting to experience like, yeah, like,
I just don't
okay,
understand.
okay.
Well, so
Keep saying something.
What about like so
What do you mean?
Adam asked, did you ever think that the guy who ran over your foot was Lama Yeshe?
So
Is
what
that
do you-
kind of like what you mean?
what
Like
do you mean?
maybe the guru is manifesting to guiding you
Is that what
in
you're
other
trying
ways
to?
too? I could be putting words. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
think about it.
Is
as
that
well.
what you mean?
I mean, that could be one way.
But what did you mean then? What was the question really? Do you have a Lama? Is this something you're talking about, your own relationship? Well, why don't you explain your experience to me, because I don't understand it. Explain what you're saying. Well, from your own experience, without to be too personal. Is that
Right,
What do you mean then?
so, I guess what I'm trying to say is like when, like through my experience with my teacher, like
Yes.
I have like a formal
Yes.
guru-disciple relationship with my teacher.
Yes.
And like, so through like over like a certain amount of years, like that relationship has changed so that
What do you mean changed? What do you
um,
mean by that?
I-
You mean you've deepened in your understanding of the Dharma,
yeah,
which is surely the reason to have the relationship. Obviously, when you're
Correct.
practicing music, you want to be better and better at music. So you are getting better and better and better at music. Then the question?
yeah, I'm not sure that I'm communicating well.
No, you're not. That's what I'm asking you. So, but it's okay if you don't mind going. Keep going. Say
Yeah.
what you mean.
Um,
So I just don't understand the point.
right,
Are you quoting something from the teachings, or are you speaking something from your own experience?
both.
Okay, so what do the
So-
teachings say?
Is
Is it a different tradition? Maybe because I'm not hearing Galupa ears. It must be Nyingmapa or something.
not in my experience. That's so maybe it's not a good.
I'm interested.
Yeah. Well, basically, my personal
Yes.
understanding
Yes.
of the process of Guru Yoga
Yes.
would be to work with, and using my words, like
Yes.
have a relationship with a specific teacher.
Right,
For-
but your relationship is cultivated by being physically with them or in your practice of deity
Both.
yoga?
Both.
Okay, so
I
you
mean, so
see
sometimes
teaching-
so sometimes like being in person and
Right.
having
Okay.
a physical relationship with
Okay.
your teacher, and then also through cultivating your own practice when
Right.
you're not having
Okay.
physically
Right.
in front of you.
Okay,
that
so what's
kind
your
of thing.
understanding where that should go?
So then, like having that relationship as a focusing lens, kind of to developing your understanding of the teachings, being able to understand like the workings of your own mind.
Yes, that's right,
These
all of
kinds
that,
of
yes,
things.
which is the
Right.
point, yes.
So like
Exactly.
through that process,
Yeah.
like then starting to see the guru in like many different places, like and then
Like what? Give an example. In many different places.
well, like to start to see like the teachings, like what you can learn from any type of experience, and seeing that as part of your relationship with your teacher.
I don't understand that part.
Okay. All right.
Explain it, explain it,
I'm
it's
trying
good,
to-
explain it.
Yeah.
So there, okay, so there you are, you're developing a relationship with your teacher, and it's about you developing to becoming a Buddha, isn't it?
Correct.
That's what you're trying to do.
Yes.
Lessening your delusions, growing your virtues, getting more and more like your guru. That's the goal, isn't it?
Yes.
So then one day you're in a shop and someone is rude to you. So how would you apply this business about the guru, the teaching from the guru into that?
So,
How would you think about that?
right, so if you're in the shop and the person's
Mean to
rude
you.
to you,
Yeah,
then
what would you think?
can see, like, what is this experiencing teaching me about, like, how I'm thinking about this.
And what's that going to do with the guru?
So,
How would you relate that to the guru? You said to see it as the guru. What's the words you'd use for that?
well, the guru is the one who's teaching you. So,
So you
if
mean it's the
you're,
guru manifesting to be angry with you to help you see your mind? Is that what you're saying?
I think, I mean, that's,
An example.
yeah.
Is that what you're
an
saying,
example
though?
of it.
I mean, I never think that.
Okay.
It seems to me what you're saying is the point. Okay, it's like if you're learning music and you've got your teacher. The more you learn music, the more you internalize your music, the more you're going to see music everywhere, isn't it?
Correct.
And the more you're going to be learning, and you get enriched by all the experiences, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, is that the same thing? I mean, if you want to call that guru devotion, then you call it that. If that's helpful for your mind. But that's surely the point of practice. That the more you learn, the more everywhere you are, you're going to be seeing your mind. That's the point.
Right.
That's the point.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's the point. That's what practice is. That's
I
what
know,
becoming a Buddha is.
but-
Why don't you ask that then? I'm now
I
being
thought,
sarcastic.
well, I mean,
Sorry,
we're using
darling.
different words, so
I know, yeah, you're using
I
different words,
wasn't
yes.
communicating it maybe as clearly as I could have been.
But now it's
and that's
perfect, now I
kind of what I
understand.
was getting at. Like, if you could say a little bit more about.
But that's the point, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
That's the point in learning anything, isn't it? That the more, and that, okay, that's a bit like saying about the blessings, really. The more, I have to use ordinary example too. The more I listen to my mother's music, the more I see her as a really perfect musician, the more I do her teachings as she tells me, the more I'm going to be seeing music everywhere and getting the learning and remembering what she told me. Oh my God, she told me this. And then I hear the cow bell and I can think something. Everywhere I go, I'm going to be hearing music. Of course I will, if I'm doing my job properly. And all the Buddhists, the Tibetans would say, there's a key to success in your ability to do that, which is you becoming a Buddha, is your devotion to your guru. That's the ground, it's the foundation, it's the basis.
Right.
That's it, that's the job, it's the point. That's the point of practice. That every second you're learning about your mind. Every second. And indeed you can think of it as a blessing of the guru. Bill Bright ran over my foot. You can think of it this way even if you like, you know. Or it reminds you of your guru. There's that wonderful prayer by Pabonka Rinpoche. Isn't it? Not Pabonka, yeah. The Lama think of me.
Calling the Lama.
Calling the Lama from afar. Every time you see anything, it reminds me of you, Lama. Reminds me of you, Lama. And that's really what devotion is. You talk to any Christian who's really devoted. You listen to a Muslim. The first word is God. The first word is, you know. This is like this. It really is like this. It reminds you everything. And that's what the opening of the heart is. And you know, and you listen to all those stories about the saints, it seems to me. What it is massive open heart. An open heart is when everything can flood in. And that helps you realize emptiness. It increases bodhicitta. Because devotion is humility. Devotion is openness. Devotion is related to him. If there's no devotion, it means it's just as ego-centered. So it's, you know, devotion seems to be this amazing, like petrol, like gas, to open up the heart, isn't it? If you think of it that way, it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense, darling.
Thank you.
We're communicating.
I mean, I feel like we are communicating, but
We are.
when I was
Different
saying
words.
things and
That's
then
right.
you said it back.
But I
I
wanted
mean,
to-
that's what I was trying to like ask you about,
I
like
hear
if
it.
you could speak a
I
little
hear
bit
it.
more about it,
I hear
and think because you mentioned like thinking of manifestation of the Dharmakaya, and I know like when you earlier in the time that you were here, you talked about Buddha nature.
That's right.
And
Yes.
that kind of thing, and identifying
Yes.
with that infinite potential.
Yeah, that's right.
So to me, like you can think of like the Buddha nature as like going for refuge in your guru, because that like the guru that you work with shows you like how you can develop
That's
your
right.
infinite
That's
potential.
right.
So I'm wondering if you could say something about the transition, like between like having this idea or identification with Buddha nature as an ordinary being, and how that transitions into like identifying with the Dharmakaya, like how that maybe
I just
crosses
think-
over into that.
I just think it's a time. It's a question of just internalizing it all, that's all, isn't it? I think that's all you're saying. The more you practice, the more this becomes natural. The more the words become real, you know? Isn't it? I can't say much more than that.
Okay.
I just think it's a question of doing it properly, following all the steps, and inevitably all the results will come, isn't it? Which means the heart is more open, the mind is more clear, you understand that Dharmakaya more, you understand emptiness more, you understand Buddha nature more, and you're becoming more and more. Literally, this is what becoming the deity means. You know? It's a gradual, organic process of, and this is why I think the tantric practices of identifying with the deity is so powerful. Because it's, you know, the Lam Rim level, the first level is dealing with all the junky stuff. Yeah. But that's one, is bringing the future result into the present. And it's the quickest path, it seems to me. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Seeing yourself as Tara, imagining you are Tara, being Tara, having the divine pride of being Tara. And because you see Tara as the Buddha, Tara as the Guru, then it becomes one, you know. That I think is the key to all these practices. This is the unique thing the Tibetans can offer. Does that make sense?
It does, yes, thank you. And I don't know if we have any more time, but I was wondering if you could say anything about the attachment that we can have for our
It's okay, don't worry about it. We're going to be a while before we give up attachment. But if we have grow the devotion on top of it, and be happy if he's rude to us, and be happy if he ignores us, that's the best way to purify your attachment. My goodness. When they don't give you everything you want, it's an atomic bomb on attachment. But it's inevitable we've got attachment. But we're working on it every day, aren't we? That's the point. It'll be a long way before it's gone. That's okay. And if it's suffering and pain and loneliness, that's mainly attachment. You know, like, not saying it's attachment, but we get too caught up in that one, you know. Yeah. If we emphasize that, I mean, I can just say some of the people, one person I'm thinking of, and it's okay, she utterly loved Lama Yeshe, adored Lama Yeshe, spent a lot of time with Lama Yeshe. And so it's just sad that he's not there, and therefore doesn't see Lama Urso at all. So that can be, I'm not suggesting it is, but it could be attachment to that form. And that's why it's so important to go past the form. Even though that form speaks to us. That form speaks to us. I mean, I met many people who've never met Lama Yeshe, but who are moved by that form. So there's some karma with that form. And it's okay, so use that form, but realise it's just this and the more we think about impermanence, the more we think about emptiness, then it will lessen the attachment. For sure it will. Isn't it? Thank you, darling. Thank you for persevering with me.
Thank you for persevering with
okay.
me.
Good. Yes, honey, go. 9 o'clock, time to go.
Yeah.
Yes,
you can answer this tomorrow if you want.
Go on, that's okay.
Just to plant the seed, this is all new to me, but I want to have an idea from a practical, logical perspective. How often do people meet with their lamas? I mean, I know you're a nun, so that's a little different
Totally
situation.
depends, sweetheart. Totally depends on the person.
So how do you get the teachings? Like how do you get the teachings, or what's the motivation?
I'm part of an entire family of thousands of people who all got the same teaching, so I get the teaching wherever I can because there's something from the same place.
Okay.
And that's why, you see, Mary, maybe we'll talk about it more tomorrow if you haven't, if it's not familiar. This one of these, using this relationship with our Lama to see the Lama as the Buddha, and when we do the various practices of Tara, Chenrezig, and visualizing, which is the bulk of the practices of a Tibetan Buddhist, this is where you are bringing yourself closer every day to the Lama, and any teachings you read, any teachings you take, you just think it's hearing it from your Lama.
Okay.
That keeps it alive and rich for you.
Mm.
You understand?
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
So in other words, more and more, what I'm really saying is the real practice is coming from our side. They're there, they're doing their job. But it's all, I've got to go to that class every day for Mr. Lee's Kung Fu. He's presenting his Kung Fu. I've got to go there, I've got to want it, I've got to practice it, I've got to turn up, I've got to make effort. It's all from my side, you know.
Sure, but if your Lama is not, say, around you, if they're traveling, as some people may have said, I think if I've
understood. I know, by practicing every day, by practicing it.
Yes, but every now and then you'll need to have
you read more teachings, you go to more teachings, other Lamas.
But are they going to show you that part of yourself?
You do the work.
Of course you do the work, but then sometimes we do as much work as we can, but sometimes it's that other external person that shows us, no?
You don't need that,
okay.
not necessarily.
Okay.
I've been a student of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa, whatever, since 1976. I can count the personal meetings I've had with them.
Okay. Yeah.
It depends on the person.
Okay.
Some people I know live with the Lama, you know. Some people I know get phone calls.
Right.
Do this, now do that. Each person completely different what they need. Absolutely without doubt. Every person is different in what they need and what they get.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yeah, I do. I just didn't expect something over the top, of course, but, you know, just wanting to have a rough idea, I guess. Thanks.
Does it make sense what I said?
Good. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Tonight. I mean, I could be like Lama Zopa and teach at 2 in the morning. Frankly, I'm too scared for my reputation. I'm not as brave as Rinpoche.
We have num-nums coming anyway.
Uh-huh. Num, what's that?
Yum yum.
What?
Refreshment.
What?
Good, it's good food.
Good food coming.
Snacks.
Oh. I see. Okay. So let's finish. I hope this friendly chat tonight. I hope some useful food for thought. Some food for thought, Kurt? Good, darling. So we do a little dedication. We think, may all these seeds be planted, ripen in the future, nourished by our practice from this second forward, never giving up in wanting to become who we really are, which is the Buddha, who is the Guru Buddha, so we can be just like them to benefit the universe, benefit sentient beings. Kewa jin yu du dai, lama sange dro gyur ne, dro wa chi kyang malu ma, de sala Jancho Sencho Rinpoche Make Panam Ke Gyurchi Ke Panyam Pame Panyam Gone Gone to Helwasho. May we never develop, even for a moment, wrong views towards the deeds of our most precious gurus. With faith and respect gained from seeing their goodness, may their full inspiration flow into our hearts. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Please teach, please teach, please teach, please stay, please stay, please stay.
I'll do my best.
One more mantra.
Oh my goodness, a cake.
Yeah, we heard you had one last night too, but
Oh, sweet.
you have one more prayer to do.
Oh my
so.
goodness,
Can we sing again?
Birthday
to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Wow.
Happy birthday, dear Rina. Happy birthday to you.
It's like a wedding cake.
It is, you can't get rid of us now.
The 3 jewels, there's the 3 bodies of the Buddha, the 3 jewels. What else? We're going to blow out the 3 root delusions. Okay, let's cut the cake. How many people are there? Well, I'll start the cut, you do the rest.
Yeah.
It's flowers of icing, is it?
Yeah, no, you can eat the flower.
Ooh, just what's a knife? What's a knife?
It's pretty dull.
Wow. My God. Okay, I'll just cook one.
Yeah, good.
We'll do like this, you can do the other way. Oh, jeez. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. There we go. Thank you so much. And with all the water, the blessing. Well, then, we need plates. Okay, here we go.
You have a plate right here.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to sit and enjoy my cake then. Wow. We need